Hey, coffee experts. Those of you running independent coffee shops, you're always looking for ways that you can drop your costs. And we here at the Coffee Experts Club really understand that. And so we've started something called Indie Coffee Coalition. And what it's designed to do is to drop your costs on two of the things that you're probably experiencing the highest sales volume in your store. And that is energy drink and frat mix. Those two line items, we've created our own products and are offering you those products at a reduced cost so that you can cut out the Red Bull of America. You can cut out the main lines of energy drinks that you're doing and serve your own energy drink at a reduced cost on a line item that you're probably already making a lot of sales on anyway. The best way that you can grow sales is by dropping your costs and maintaining a current volume. So check us out at indiecoffee.co and we'll love to tell you more there.
Welcome to the Coffee Experts Club, where we discuss all of the insights, expertise, and drama that goes into making your passion your profession. Our hosts, Aaron, Ben, and Drew, are three coffee experts who have taken their coffee experience and turned it into true expertise. They have consulted with major coffee brands throughout the United States and beyond, providing operations expertise and growth strategy for drive-through openings, multiple locations, and everything in between. So brew yourself a cup and hang out a bit with the Coffee Experts Club.
What's going on, Ben Clyde?
Not much. It feels like a Monday, even though it's not. It's been weird. All day I've been like, oh, start of the week. Just kidding. It's not.
Oh, man. So crazy. Holidays always throw me for a little bit of a loop, though. And I'm like, man, what can I squeeze in? What can I not? I'm sure anybody listening today that has a coffee shop, you're like, tell me about it. Like, I know Drew ended up having to work down in Belize, because Coffee de los Mayas were open 7 days a week, 365, and so, but on Christmas, we let it be something that people volunteer for. So I think that sometimes, as owners know, that doesn't always work out so good. So Drew had some
This year it
shift.
was Drew that volunteered.
This year it was Drew. So I think that holidays are always tricky like that. But, it's one of those things I'm always amazed when people will close because I'm like, man, everybody is looking to get a cup of coffee on Christmas. Everybody's looking to get a cup of coffee on the way to their next family party. Like there is so much business. We had crazy busy days. Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, day after Christmas was just epic, And so, man, if you're not open on Christmas, I know everybody wants to sit at home and I get it, but man, there is business to be made. And a lot of places, I know Coffee de los Mayas, it's double time. You know what I mean? Like they're going to pay you extra to work holiday, but
I remember the first year we'd opened Road 68, I learned the hard way that it was going to be busy Christmas morning because I had one poor barista scheduled from open till about 10 o'clock. And it was great all the way up until about 9 o'clock when the poor guy got slammed.
oh, man. Was that when you were managing 68? Did you have to go in?
Yep. I went in and helped, and it was like, then everybody started showing up, but those were the days of like, we were like, we don't know what business is going to be like. It was our first Christmas.
Yeah.
And first Christmas, and especially in a highly suburban area, it was like, back then we had no contact, but it was like, yeah, everybody's open presents. It's 9 o'clock. They want to go get a cup of coffee now.
That's
and
right.
Sure enough, like drive-through lines stacked all the way back. I mean, the guy made like $500 in tips though, so he wasn't too sad about it.
I will say, like people, people, even my wife, she's like, "What? We're open on Christmas? We should be ashamed." I'm like, "Baby, people tip like crazy on Christmas. You know how bad people feel for the people working on Christmas? The guys make double time and killer tips. Like if they want to do it, they're making some good money Christmas Day."
Yeah, I always loved it too. I'd work it sometimes too, and every person coming through the drive-through would be like, "Why are you open?" Like, because you're here.
That's right. Shoot. Well, Ben, today we thought we would talk about brass tacks, the brass tacks of business.
Brass tacks.
I think that, the more and more we do coffee consulting, the more and more hoods that we're under, the more and more coffee shops you see, the more and more business that we help people run, the more and more I see and realize. Because, like when it's your own thing, all you see is what you've seen, right? So if you're running for somebody else, that's your comparable. And then as you start running your own thing, that becomes your thing, right? But it's, a lot of folks, you can see them like trying to peek in or look at how other people are doing things or like doing the drive-through and maybe checking prices. But it's all like conjecture. Nobody's going to just like open the war chest. But I think the gift that we have and to consult so many brands is like, we're under the hood of all of it. So we see how all of it runs, and I think that I'm consistently surprised at how few people operate their business to a system of business. I mean, like this is how we run every time across the board, and I think the franchises have really nailed it, right? Because they've had to. If you're going to sell a system of business, then it has to be the same way every time, you know? And I know a lot of indies put their nose up in the air, you know, these independent coffee shops, and they're like franchise. And it's like, that's the 4-letter curse word of an independent coffee shop. But I will say this is that there are lessons that we can learn from the franchise, because we've got to be under quite a few of the franchises underneath their hoods as well. And what they do is it's executed the same way every time.
Yep.
And what that makes it is very replicable. That means that anybody can do it, because as long as they stay to it, you know, Drew and I had an interesting conversation on the sideline the other day of an account that he's working with right now, working on a project block with them. But he's like, but bro, it is a lot of the magic, and it's the magic that we've earned through the years. And that's the magic that we bring. And I said, yeah, but the thing is that if you keep it mystical and magical, it's not replicable. So what we need to be able to make sure is that every shop that we're going into has like a system of business they're executing to it. It doesn't always have to look like ours, but it should be theirs, and they should be executing to it every time.
Well, and it should be, I mean, it's not like, you know, running a drive-through coffee shop isn't like, you know, recreating the wheel every time. Like at this point, it's a pretty standardized system of business.
Yeah.
If you're trying to recreate the wheel of drive-through coffee, you're more doing yourself a disservice, because you're just making more work for yourself. I mean, even when we were back in the roasters days, I was always trying to pull apart what Starbucks is doing. And even then, you know, we turned our nose up at Starbucks. Corporate overload Starbucks. But
Right.
they do what they do well. And it's
Yeah.
because they have a system of business that is so concrete that they can literally plop down 40 stores in a year and they all do well. And so if you can take that piece of it, yeah, put your own flair on it, but keep the structure, keep the bones, you'll be successful. I mean, because obviously it's worked for so many others this year. I think it's just when it's like when I go back to the roasters days, every time we'd open a new location, we'd always joke every new location was always different. It was like, oh, what kind of location are we going to open this year? And that was such a pain, because it was always like, okay, what equipment can we fit in here? We never had anything standardized up until probably the last few stores. Then we were like, hey, it'd probably be smart for us to just build the same building every time. Let's keep the
Right.
footprint the same, so we're not always having to go, okay, I guess this size fridge will work. No, that won't work. Or can we get this size machine? It's always something different.
Yep.
Even down to your building, just do the same building every time and save yourself some heartache.
And give yourself like visibility, right? Like if people recognize from a distance your building, that's only helping you, right? Because there are some buildings, we talk about this a lot on the show, like not every corner you put it on is an A corner. You know what I mean? Like not every site that you open up is an A site, you know, but at some point, even your slowest stores become part of brand recognition. Oh, this is a bigger thing than just that onesie twosie. You know what I mean? Like that location number 3, you start picking up momentum. Location number 4, they're like, wow, look at these people go. And the more and more you can make your stuff look alike, the more and more you get that brand recognition no matter where you drop it. And I think it's smart.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, again, Starbucks does that great. Their buildings are always pretty much the same. And they just glitz up the interior from location to location. Obviously, that's more difficult if you're moving into a previous space. You know, you're not building up, you're taking over an old location from somebody else. But as much as you can, just make that footprint as replicable as you can. I mean, we had, 15 locations having, 15 different fridges on an Excel sheet. Like just multiply that by location, and your work just gets more and more every time you do that.
Well, and it makes it a nightmare too for like maintenance downstream as well, right? Because I remember Cody back in the day just crying about like all the different kinds of parts he was having to buy because we hadn't just settled on, no, this is the uniform machine we buy every time. Like this is the uniform fridge we buy every time. That therefore gaskets, anything, fan belts, anything that you're buying that you're going to use on these things, we change them out. Filters, anything that you're going to be using, you're buying in bulk because you use them the same at all of them. And it's not a guessing game when this machine starts to fail. If you haven't raised up your own tech on the interior, one of the easiest ways to do it is make sure all your machines are the same. That way he's maintaining the same machines over and over again. The hardest thing you can do to him is put in a different machine every time, a different blender, a different roaster. And for Cody, different roasters too. You know what I mean? Like a different espresso machine. Like people, we get too wild and crazy, a different ice machine, a different and different brands that have different parts, that have different warranties, that have different people you have to talk to. Because there are some companies that do warranty stuff better and do tech help better, And so really getting clear on this is our system of business. When we open new locations, this is how we do it. But I even think beyond new locations, Ben, I know you and I do a lot of this. We're in a contract right now that I feel like that company that's doing really well at it, but we've been helping them as well with, hey, let's start with just a scorecard of your numbers. Like, do you have all your numbers someplace? Are you clear on what your numbers are? I don't know if you want to talk about that a little bit and some of the numbers we've helped develop. recently, I feel like our scorecards are getting better and better.
Yeah, I mean, most folks when they get into the business world, they're at least somewhat aware of what a P&L is. And,
Hmm.
if you've ever done anything in business, okay, I should probably track how much money I'm spending versus how much money I'm bringing in. I want
Right.
to know what's actually going to be sitting in my bank account. But I think that's where most often stops because you get into this pattern of, okay, every month I know how much money I've spent and how much money I've made. And then weekly or daily, I'm just looking at, sales on my POS system. That's the great baseline, but if you're not looking at something a little bit deeper than that, or your number is a little bit deeper, or have a scorecard that's tracking those weekly, then you're going to lose track of a lot of things. What's your labor like? What's your labor percentage? You obviously want to know how much you're spending in labor more than just once a month. Like
Yeah.
if you have a month where your labor is at 50% and you don't know that until the end of the month, well, there goes all of your profit because you just spent it all on labor. But if you don't track that at least weekly, you can't make any near real time adjustments. I mean, the holidays is a perfect example of if you're overspending your labor, and Christmas rolls around or any other big holiday rolls around and you're not watching it weekly, then you're gonna have a lot of variance there. Like holidays, just they throw your shop into a wild routine and a wild labor routine. So unless you're watching these things weekly, you're going to be losing out on a lot more dollars than you would have if you just said, hey, my POS probably has a system built in for labor. Why don't I just throw that on a sheet every week and I'll look at it and make sure that I'm not, swinging wild either in too high of labor or too low of labor. And that's just one point. There should be several points on your scorecard that you're looking at weekly, just so you're aware what's happening and can make changes pretty quickly instead of just monthly.
Yeah, I mean, what I hear a lot of people say a lot of times is, obviously, Ben, we've been doing coffee a long time, and POS systems have come a long way, like
Mhm.
become a lot more comprehensive, have got a lot more features, a lot more reports, a lot more visibility. And so you start talking about numbers with people who own coffee shops, and they're like, oh, yeah, I've got those numbers. Oh, yeah, I can get those numbers. But it's not an issue of do you have those numbers or if you can get those numbers. It's how closely are you tracking those numbers day over day, week over week, month over month. And I think a scorecard, for any of you who haven't heard us talk about this before, it's a spreadsheet where numbers are broken out by the week and it tells a story, So from the top down, the top of your funnel in, like how much are we spending in ad dollars? How many people are we getting on our socials? How many people are we speaking to? Trickling it down to how we do in our sales and how many transactions per day and how we doing on like all the different pieces. What's our average transaction? What's all these
Mhm.
different pieces that begin to educate you on how could we begin to turn the dials? I think that people forget you have control of the dials. We aren't just left subject to chance. I'm going to open this business and I hope this works, and it's like, but if you don't have control of the dials, if you don't know how to steer the ship, then you do a lot of times just leave yourself open to chance. And the best way to begin to control the ship is to have a really clear way of how you're diagnosing numbers. If you're listening now, and we dive deep in this on Coffee Experts Academy. So if you're interested in that,
Mhm.
coffeeexpertsacademy.com. We 35 weeks, we go deep into a lot of these topics where we give you tools, we give you things for free. But I'd love to give you, if you just want the scorecard, our standard coffee scorecard on any of our socials, if you just want to comment scorecard, I'll make sure I send that over to you with a little tutorial video on how to build that out for yourself. But I would highly recommend the first thing that we start with, almost every coffee client we start with consulting, is we talk about, are you clear on your numbers and are you collecting them all in
Mhm.
one single spot? Because like you're saying, Ben, like maybe some of that is from your POS and maybe some of that is from your accounting software. Maybe some of that's through your time cards. You know what I mean? Like people have different platforms doing different things. Those are usually three different entities. You'll use Toast or Square or Clover for your POS system, but then you might be using something else to capture time. You know what I mean? Maybe they're clocking in and maybe you're paying them from a different platform
Yep.
for payment. And then from there, usually that's a different platform than what you're actually doing your accounting in. So maybe this is Gusto or you're using some like intuitive HR platform that helps you with some of the payroll based things, but that's usually a different tool than what you're using for like your QuickBooks or your Xero or whatever you're using to do your accounting. And the beauty of a scorecard is you're probably going to grab numbers from each of those places and drop them into one single place, this scorecard, this
Mhm.
column over column, week over week, where you're able to allow those numbers to begin to tell a story. So you can grab the sticks, right? You can grab the dials, you can begin to make changes.
Oh, yeah, and it really helps with just getting rid of those sort of gut feelings of like, how does my business feel like? Because a
Yeah.
lot of it, if you don't have that week over week check pulse on those important numbers, you are just kind of going by feel. Well, it felt
Yeah.
busy yesterday, or last weekend felt like it was a busy weekend, but was it really? It may have been busy, but was it actually super profitable? Meaning, like, you might have had a lot of cars in line, but were all those cars just only getting one drink? What if all those cars got one drink and a food item, or one drink and, a
Yep.
food item and an energy drink? You
Yep.
don't know that unless you're tracking how many transactions you're doing, but also how many items per transaction are you doing.
Right.
Those are all key numbers. Like, you could be talking to your barista Sunday morning. They're like, yeah, it's slammed. And you're looking at the numbers. You're like, what? We're not making any money right now. Well, yeah, because all of those cars coming in are just single people getting single small Americanos. Okay, maybe we should probably think about how we can upsell these into bigger orders or adding food. None of that you'll know unless you're actually tracking weekly over numbers. And if you're just going by that gut, again, an 18-year-old kid's gonna be like, yeah, I'm so busy. And you're like,
Yeah.
but where's my money?
Hey, experts, we've got something really awesome that we do here at Coffee Experts Club, and that's called the My First Drive-Through Coffee Masterclass. So if you're opening your next coffee shop, I think a lot of times you may think to yourself, I know what goes into opening a coffee shop. I've been doing this for years, but maybe you've been doing it for somebody else. And maybe this is your first option of starting a coffee shop on your own. Or maybe you don't know anything about coffee and you're just like, I'm looking for a good investment opportunity. Starting a coffee shop seems like a good place to put it, and you're going to enter into it. But what you don't know is all the things that you don't know, right? And so what we've done with this masterclass is taken behind the scenes, how you find your first location, what you need to be thinking about in finding a location. We give you a gift in the masterclass where it's a step-by-step process of how you're opening your coffee shop, the different checkpoints you need from coming up with your plans and talking with the city and then negotiating a lease. And then how do you build a team and what are the different pieces you need to be thinking about? It's a great masterclass, door to door, start to finish, completely free on opening up your next coffee drive-through. So check it out. It's at myfirstdrivethrough.coffee, and it's a great masterclass. You won't regret it. We'll see you on the inside there.
And I love too, like the more and more locations that you have, I love that in a scorecard, you can begin to break that all out. You know what I mean? That yes, your average trans, your average item, all those different things that you can have like a delineation based on store. So you can ask yourself, how is this store comparing to this store? But I loved even Roasters Days is a great example because that's an independent, right? They got all the way up to 15 locations in a roastery, right? And I remember breaking out their scorecard and it was like, we had the top 5 stores that would, that we'd put there and we'd compare their numbers to each other. And then we began to channel that down to the stores that weren't as great, and be asking ourselves, are we using best practice across all stores? Because I do think in some ways it is location, but in other ways it can be team and location. And then it can be like process that locations are following that we begin to find trends of, yeah, I remember we used to have competitions all the time for hard goods about this time of year, like comps on who's selling hard goods and what's the best process they're using to be able to sell as many hard goods as possible, because there's great profit that you can bring out of those things. And everybody's looking for something around the holidays to give to somebody they love from a place that they love.
Yep. Yeah, I remember those hard goods sales and competitions they were fantastic. And honestly, again, going back to tracking our scorecards, we'd only know how much to order and how much to drop to each store because we track that every year. We go, okay, these 4 stores, and some of them, the stores that did best weren't even our biggest, our top dogs.
That's
They were
right.
like some of the small dogs, but those kids would get a hard good and then they loved selling them. So we would go, okay, this store is not a top performer, but when it comes to selling merchandise, hydro flasks, mugs, whatever it is, let's send more their way because they were actually really good at selling. And the only way we knew that is because we tracked it every time we sold, new merchandise. It was like, how many stores are selling how many, and keep that over the length and the history of their being open. And you start to realize, okay, I can actually make much more money if I split this up certain ways. And again, all goes back to actually tracking that on a scorecard somewhere.
And I think that honestly, like a lot of people may say, they like what we've noticed, Ben, is that coffee shop owners are the most freaking stubborn people on the planet, right? Like, and they resist, right? So if you're listening to this and you're resisting, if you're listening to this, like, yeah, I'm not sure about that. Like, just know this part of the course, we get that every single day. But let me tell you this, what absolutely is the telltale of all is there are some coffee shops that have been open for 6, 7, 8, 9 years, like Roasters, that had grown to 15 shops. And there are other coffee shops that have been open 6, 7, 8, 9 years, and they're at 2, 3, and largely that's told by the kinds of systems they're putting in place, back to systems of business, the kinds of system they're putting in place for the sake of, for growth. And I know that one of the greatest things for us looking back on scorecards, even for me this year with Coffee to Those Mice, as we come through the slow season, I can have that knee jerk that you're talking about, Ben, where I start getting panicky or I start getting anxious. I'm like, the sales look awful. And I can get super reactionary instead of like, no. Open up last year's scorecard, the same stretch of dates. And yeah, I can do that in my POS, but we all know that is like you stretch a certain number of dates, then you stretch a certain number of dates, then you stretch a certain number of dates. So now like you're taking a process that if you would have just looked back on last year's scorecard would have taken less than 15 seconds to see a good storyline of how your sales went in this particular month. Now you just spent 45 minutes to an hour pulling numbers that you had to write down, just so you can get a good feeling in your chest about how things work. It was great this last L10. We looked back on it and I'm like, sorry. I'll back it down. Because you watch the trend and you're like, no, I get it. I see where this is coming from. And remember, this is stormy season in Belize right now. So we had a hurricane last year about this time. And that's why that number dropped. And you note those things in your scorecard. So it begins to tell a story and you can begin to predict trends.
Well, yeah. And that's the biggest thing too, right? Like for this time of year, especially going into January too, January is death month for most coffee shops, at least in the location where it gets cold. But if you have a scorecard, you've got historical data, you can actually forecast going into that. I mean, that's something else we talk about all the time too. What's your sales? What's your expected sales going to be next month, the month after that? Forecasting or projecting what you think your sales could be. If you know going into January, like this is always our worst month of the year. Okay, what can we do to mitigate that? How about we run some deals? How about we do a January jackpot of 5 days of deals? How about we bring on some new merchandise? How about we do something else other than just like exactly what we did last year when we had lower sales in January? Again, you can't do that unless you know what those numbers are, you're tracking them, and they're easy to find. If it's going to take you 3 hours to go back through all of your historical sales and your POS, that's just going to be mind numbing. And it's less time for you to actually figure out what you're going to do in January.
And honestly, I mean, it doesn't have to be something super expensive. Maybe you're like, well, hey, I don't have a bunch of cash reserve I'm sitting on that I could do a bunch of hard good ordering. That costs money for me to make money. You can do simple things like sticker drops. Like Dutch Bros has nailed that. Like get a limited run of stickers. Get really consistent on when you drop them. Hype it up on your socials. Begin to create buzz and drive people to think that they're going to get something unique that you're going to run out of, right? Create a scarcity. Like I think all those are techniques that you can begin to learn and move on based upon, hey, did that work last year? Did it not work last year? Oh, it didn't work in January. Let's try it this year in February around Valentine's Day. Like whatever it is, like let's grab the sticks, let's find the dials, and let's start making decisions so that we're actually in control of the business instead of always left to feel like anxious. What am I going to do now? What am I going to do now? What am I going to do now? And then there's no calendaring. You haven't thought anything through because you're trying to remember what you did last year instead of just documenting it so you can have a clean conversation when you meet weekly, because that's another part of the scorecard method is like meet weekly. Like a weekly meeting where you're going over numbers, where you're holding people accountable to things. I think that it just helps with so much to have a solid thing that you're going back to.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And if you ever going to get to the point where you are trying to project sales and you're trying to think, okay, what's 2025? What are my sales expectations for 2025? What are my reach goals? What do I want to try and push my team to reach for sales? You're not going to know that unless you've got historical data to work on. It's not like when you project sales, you go, well, January, I'm going to do $100,000. In February, I think I'll do $300,000. No, you got to have some history behind that. And without those sales goals, you're kind of just, boat riding along in the dark on the water, not really heading anywhere specific. If you can give your people sales goals and reach goals as a system of business, like, if I can tell my team that, hey, in January, I expect us to do this much in revenue. I would like to do this much. How can we get there? Well, then you've got some little bit of team buy-in going, well, we could, try and upsell a new muffin on every order or try and push, extra shots. I remember me and a barista coworker of mine used to play this game where we would ask every person that came through the drive-through if they wanted their quad shot that day, knowing that they only get 2 shots. You get your quad shot today? It was how many upsells of extra shots could we sell? And 9 times out of 10, they go, I don't usually get that, but that sounds good. I'll get that. And so we play this game of like, who can sell the most extra shots for the day? And it was a blast. And it was just that little bit of upselling, a little bit of competition, all came from like, how do we hit that sales goal that we want to hit for the month? Those kinds of things you don't have unless you have a solid system of business and a scorecard.
And I think like sales goals is something, just like you said, Ben, like people want to have fun at work. And I think the coffee can be such a fun place to work, right? You get to all the interaction with the customers. You get to work with a consistent team. If you're culturing your team right, that can all be really fun, but all the more when you can make it a little bit competitive and you can pit stores against stores a little bit, and you can stir up some healthy competition and like even some healthy trash talk and like try and let it feed a little bit. Hard goods was a great example of that too, with that whole thing of the hydro flasks, where we would be running low and like we'd have a competition. We'd reward the store that could sell the most. And so you'd see them really feeding frenzy. But I think like you're saying, like, how can we give them something fun where we give them some of the controls too? Let's offer them a bigger bonus if they can hit their reach goal this year. Like, let's give them some opportunity where they get a bigger piece of the pie too. It's not just them thinking they're making us richer. Like, let's give them an opportunity to enrich in their own lives and have some fun while they're doing it and create some cool culture camaraderie. And like, it's like you can get like 2 or 3 different birds with the same stone if you'll just go into it with intentionality, if you'll just go into it with a mindset of, no, this is our system of business. We execute to it every single time. We know it's work because it's been proven, and we've been tracking that proof. And so we know exactly if A plus B is going to equal C this time of year because we've had this track record of doing it that way.
That's a great example. And I think something that we gloss over a lot was those Hydro Flask sales that we would do. That competition, like that's not a hard good product that you sell in quantity. We're talking about $60, $65, mugs. That at a coffee shop is a hard sell to begin with.
Yeah.
But because we made such a great competition out of it, we had an employee bonus structure behind it, system behind it that gave them a larger bonus the more they sold. We would sell hundreds and hundreds of these $65, sometimes $70 Hydro Flasks in a single day. Like that's not an easy thing to do like in a week at a coffee shop. But because we made it competitive with the employees, they had fun. We always employed scarcity. So when they were coming out, the customers were excited for it. We created a really good system around these hard goods, and it became easy for us to sell a really, really, really high retail price point item in a single day. I mean, we'd run out of them usually after day 3 of them being in the shops. Right. And that was because we knew exactly how much to order. We knew exactly how much we had grown that year. So we ordered that amount X of the Hydro Flask. We had a great system of employee benefit and bonus behind it. We made it competitive, we made it fun, and we made it scarce. Like all of those things combined, and you're, selling $20,000 worth of Hydro Flasks in a day and everybody's having a great time. Like that doesn't just happen magically. We had to figure that out on our own. So get that system in place. And that's just one system, 1 point for, a day's worth of sales. These are systems that you should build throughout your company that's just for Hydro Flask sales. But what is that system of success for, your monthly sales, your monthly labor, your monthly COGS? All of these should have that same successful system built into them. So it's just every year we're just doing the same thing. We're making it better and better and better and better.
Yeah, I love it. All righty, Ben. It's been a good one, man. Coffee Experts. I hope you guys enjoyed today's show. I think we're going to continue trekking into this probably next week, maybe talking a little bit more about the whole idea of profit and loss, some ideas around workflows, best of the best that we've seen amongst all the different shops that we've worked with. And it's going to be a good one. So systems of business. If you heard things today, we're at a great time of the year for you to set some goals for yourself. So I encourage you to be thinking about what you can do to better your systems of business. So you're executing from the same book of business every time you're doing it. Let's take a page out of the franchise book. Let's make it ourselves, and let's make money for us and increase our business value over time. So Ben, always awesome, man. And I hope everybody has a great day the rest of the day today.
See ya.
Thanks so much for joining us today. For those of you who are looking to become a coffee expert yourself, we offer an incredible, thorough training online for opening your first coffee drive-thru at www.myfirstdrivethru.coffee.